Hello and welcome, everyone. Welcome to December 23rd, 2025. We're almost at the end of the year, the day before Christmas Eve. Thank you for taking the time, and for those that are in our live audience, grateful for them joining us as well. Today will be a simple report out where we review the prior topics within the digital world and potentially have a council meeting if needed, and then have Q&A. So it'll be real quick. We're going to move over the opening prayer tonight and just recognize that there is a spiritual component to the creation of everything before it's physically created. And we're in the process of physically creating a digital layer, not just us, but humanity. And we're grateful for the opportunity to be able to recognize that and play a role in that. We're also grateful for our co-hosts that are here and for that really always are here. And we're grateful for their existence and for all that they do every day. As a reminder, this is a private membership association. Some of the things that we talk about may be forward-looking, and the things that we talk about is really about how centralized systems and secret combinations basically are centralizing humanity and how we can utilize systems and technologies to directly combat some of those centralized systems. We won't go through what those secret combinations are. If you've paid attention in the past, they're pretty evident, but they operate within different verticals and categories, whether we're talking about oil or energy or communications or banking or pharmaceutical or health or monetary. The monetary systems that we see here are private and public, and there's definitely a private and public ecosystem that's going. And it's really simple that the alternative to it is a decentralized approach where individuals own their own identity, their own data, and ultimately their own choice. And that's really what this is about. There's a serious fork in the road that's really become more and more evident in this year of 2025, where systems will be centralized. And I'm not just talking any system, but all systems, whether it's social media platforms or health platforms or technology platforms or productivity or data storage or calendaring or contacts or messaging or even taxation and elements such as anything that ties to the individual. AI will literally centralize those and combine those as the data sources are being shared, which this fork in the road becomes very, very evident that, especially with what they'll be doing around building out data centers. And it's not just the computing that we've seen with apps and devices, but you'll see agents that will become a part of people. And I think in 2026, you'll start seeing robots that will have those agents or identities built into them. And it's just, on one hand, it's crazy scary. On the other hand, it's actually beautiful. And we're grateful to be able to play a role in creating that decentralized alternative for humanity. For those of you that may be first timers, which some of you are, whether it's online or even with the live audience, it starts with identity, and then finance, storage, communications, assets, endorsements, governance, and services. And there's multiple services that can layer on it with multiple service providers. The digital world is really a framework where everything can come together. And we look forward to going through the details of how that can find balance, really by giving everyone a digital key. And some people call it a cryptographic key. Some people call it 12 words. Some people call it 24 words. But the net is you have an identity that uses intelligence, especially around key rotation and even key restoration, that is going to change how the world that calls blockchain will actually do things around decentralization. This is one of the ways around derived keys that the digital world is very different. So everything that you do, whether it's starting a business or creating a digital asset or getting married or creating license plates or creating registrations, everything that you document in your life, everything that you create becomes a derived key, which artificial intelligence and machine learning can't actually follow you in. We take this role and responsibility very serious, not just for this generation and dispensation, but for future generations as the digital world and physical world connects. We believe that there absolutely can be a responsible way to do that. And using the things that we've talked about in unison is actually the way that we're currently focused. Speaking of focus, once a year, we lock goals for the next year. And this is what we locked in 2024 for the year of 2025. we're glad to report out on it. And I believe that we've accomplished a lot, especially with the resources that we have around exchanges. So we've actually been able to light up 8 exchanges within the year. The goal was 5. So we've exceeded that goal. As far as the phones, we did miss some expectations around Clear phones, but we met them with Apple phones, Samsung phones, Huawei phones, as well as any kind of Android device in the world, with multiple different apps for multiple different jurisdictions, cross-platform. And next year, we'll make another run at the Clear phones. And I believe that pausing within this 2025 year to get AI more matured. And for those that are not aware, we can actually run AI, and we've successfully been able to do that on the phones in 2025. So imagine not only a decentralized phone, but also decentralized apps that actually layer AI inside of it. So there'll be a huge, exciting 2026 where people can actually become private. Like, everybody thinks that AI has to be run in a centralized approach. It doesn't. So that fork in the road, that decentralized versus centralized, is going to become very evident. Our goal with the Clear Homes and some of the orders, for those that are not aware, we try and focus on decentralized systems that everyone is using in some form or another, whether it's around transportation with Clear Autos, whether it's around where we live with different homes. And it's not just a particular type of home, but it's the way that the homes are being built. For instance, we've all heard of these things called 15-minute cities. Well, they're being built in such a way where the credit and the identity / payments and reputation all tied to the centralized systems. We believe that there's a better way to actually build some of them, not only build, but also deploy, fund, finance, and distribute around ownership. And we've been able to reach over $1 billion this last year in orders. And our goal was actually, we've exceeded it by 120+%. So grateful for that. And then the autos been able to work through and get that to a point where it can actually be facilitated within 2025. So the community side of it, we had 2 acquisitions and a launch that, in my opinion, did not go as planned. But the reality is I think it's a massive blessing, primarily because utilizing AI and the development side of it, it's going to go much, much faster. I'll talk a little bit about that as I report out with some of these different systems. And I look forward to standing up the priorities for next year here in the coming weeks. For those of you that are not aware, Life, and we'll actually, I won't talk about the details there, but this gentleman, Ray Mahir, it may be a name from the past for some of you. It may be very familiar for others. He was a team member and a friend and a brother that passed away after about a decade of working on this technology. And I'm grateful to be able to report that Aotearoa is now live and fully funded for over 1,000 years. That includes the applications, the development, the hosting, the ping power of the pipe, and elements of storage. The storage is actually going to use the digital world decentralized and sharded storage data systems, but in perpetuity, the actual system will stand up. And it's dedicated to Ray for all that he stood for so many, and grateful for the opportunity to know him in this life and learn from him. This is actually a site. So Aotearoa.life is the actual site. For those of you that didn't know him, I'll tell you a little bit about him. He's a father, a husband, and a dedicated man. He literally went through the military. He was in intelligence within the New Zealand environment. He went into marketing and public relations environment. He understood in detail the things that this work is all about. This is him and about 35 others, a portion of them photographed here, but very key individuals when it ties to this work. This was probably 5 years ago in Aotearoa / New Zealand, and just grateful for the opportunity to not only be a part of this gathering, but some of the individuals that were involved in this room. I won't go through who they are, but it's very key to the work. Maybe I'll go ahead and play this a little later at the end of the evening if it's appropriate. But this work, particularly Aotearoa, is stood up in his name and in the future of not only his posterity, but humanity. And grateful for, it's been a long time coming. He wanted to come to Utah from New Zealand to be a part of the Digital World Town Hall event. I want to say it was this 2021 event. And to do that back in those days, they were mandating vaccinations, and 2 weeks later he passed away. And so we're grateful for his heart and who he is and will always be. And grateful to be able to know him. With that being said, this system will provide identity for a nation and a people that understand identity and the importance of it. Not only that, but family. Whakapapa, as they call it. It doesn't start with an F word. It actually starts with, here, it's actually spelled out right here. Starts with a W. I know it sounds like an F, but it's not. But they understand accountability to one another. They understand the importance of the connectedness of humanity, and they understand love. And this system is dedicated in love, not only to him, but to all of humanity that chooses it. The system does not have any backdoors. It does not have any ties. It does not have any centralized elements other than the interface that it sits on. The tools, the keys are all owned by the individual. There will be apps that will be disseminated through different systems. The first one will be with Apple. I'm going to go ahead and log out here so you can actually see the download environment. So the Apple apps will actually come in different jurisdictions, whether they're unions. And for those that are not aware, the first union that we're rolling out is the Pacific Union. The second union will actually be the Arabian Union. And you can actually see some of those within these interfaces. So you can see the different logins, and you'll also be able to touch and see the different downloads as they go into the respective different phone infrastructures. This is Apple or iOS, and there's different countries. So this is actually the Aotearoa one. You'll see the downloads here, or you'll actually just find them in your different app store that's related to it. So there's different countries and kingdoms that are already being stood up in real time. There are different states and provinces and jurisdictions that are also being stood up. And then there's different platforms. Within the Android environment, you'll find that there's actually two apps. There's also these two apps combined if you want to do that. And then in the Clearer phone environment, there's actually 16 apps. It doesn't just do the life side of it and the payment side of it, but it also does many other things. And if you're using a Clear phone, you understand some of the features and functions, whether it's where you go online, how you communicate, chat, share photos, contacts, calendar, messaging, and identity, and how you log into centralized systems using decentralized identity. And we'll go through that and show that to you, how that works. But grateful for this day to come. It's actually been about 10 years in the making. Aotearoa is a very special part of the world. And the people there, the Maoris, are amazing. Their hearts are amazing. They are warriors, but quiet, humble, and very limited on pride. This is actually a system that will stand in parallel with New Zealand's system, not necessarily the government and not necessarily the crown, but in parallel so that they can actually adopt it. We believe that, at least I personally believe, that the people in New Zealand will honor and continue to honor the people of Aotearoa and the history, even though there's overlap, because the lands are the same lands. But the hearts, I believe, will actually gain alignment in time, even though there's a massive pull between these systems that we talk about with centralization and decentralization. It is something that is running rapid down there in that part of the world. And I really believe that New Zealand will be one of the first countries that actually does right by its teams, its individuals, the culture, and I hope to be able to see that in my lifetime. As Ray, maybe there'll be a time where his posterity will be able to see it, but I look forward to that reunion one way or another. So there's a lot that they can do there. There's a lot of services. There's a lot of systems. There's a lot of advancements. I believe that the system has some of the best of all the deployments in the whole world. And the timing is good. It's not too early. It's not too late, but it's definitely needed. And I believe that the payments and the identity, when people really see and understand the maturity of what this means, the adoption will be realized. This is actually what the Aotearoa Life app will look like. So it's a little bit different than some of the prior ones, where it's got life, identity, communication, assets, properties, business, and then many other elements. But and then some of the different apps, if you're running ClearPhones, you can actually do some really neat things with those. But so that's a big report out. It's been a long time coming, and grateful to wrap that up before 2025 commences or wraps up, so to speak. So the next things, does anybody have any comment on that before I jump to the next topic? If not, I'll jump to the next topic. So what we're looking at here is a new system that we've talked about for years. This system is actually run 100% by AI based upon the laws and the legislation that's found within the digital world. For those of you that may be new to this, I'll go ahead and navigate there. I'll go to digitalworld.earth. I will click on governance. If you haven't read the declaration, I highly recommend it. And then you click on legislation. Some of these are still in draft form. Some of them are fully deployed. This Digital World Choice Act is actually already deployed. One of the other ones is a treaty between the Pacific Union and the digital world. A big one that actually was implemented this year, or at least through the legislative process, it's been in for about 6 months, is the Digital World Jobs Act. So these are all just different laws and frameworks. They're simple, they're clean, they're tight. They take some of the best things of the fiat or physical world and implement them as a legal framework for systems like what I'm telling you about that will actually function and work. I'll go ahead and walk through these. So imagine that there's a conflict. Somebody ordered something, somebody didn't ship it, or they shipped it and it didn't receive, or many other use cases. Maybe there was a lease agreement with a property rental. Maybe there was a website payment dispute. Maybe you've got intellectual property or trademark violations. These are basic cases that people can go through and actually create a case and have requests that basically go back. One, it verifies who they are and the other parties that are involved. So the notice and the communication process is built in. The ability to understand kind of the reputation and virtue metrics are built in. The ability to be able to transact and see a case or a history log is built in. The ability to actually add additional comments or responses is dynamically integrated. The ability for these to be public or private can also be built into it. I'll give you an example. So I'll go into Digital World, I'll mouse over on services, I will click on dispute resolution. So you use QR codes to actually authenticate and create the disputes. They come in different categories, right? So let's say that there's a class action dispute, multiple different parties involved, and it's a public environment. So maybe it's about talcum powder. A lot of people were involved in that, or maybe poppy seed tea, or maybe, XYZ. So this is basically multiple people can get involved, the details of the case, or it can be private, or it can be something that's maybe not even a class action lawsuit. Maybe it's just a simple dispute. We see them every day with orders that are online. Right now, you may see them with shopping platforms like Shopify or with Amazon. But imagine the ability to be able to say, hey, I actually want an individual involved, or I want AI to basically run the environment. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So let's say you go into a transaction. This particular one is a property rental. Let's see if I can find a different one. Let's say this copyright one here, okay? So this is in a deliberation process. You can see the stage that it's in: setup, evidence, questioning, deliberation, and then consensus. Well, in this environment, you've got party A, okay? and then you've got party B, and they have different, in some cases they call them a plaintiff and a respondent, but you'll basically have two different parties, and then you'll have folks that are also involved, and you can have facilitators. In this case, this is actually an AI facilitator. So we're not using an individual that's a human that already works in law. Maybe they've been a judge, maybe they've been neutrals, maybe they've done mediation or moderations type things. But if you kind of dig through the details, in my opinion, this is probably one of the best use cases for artificial intelligence, is to help facilitate gathering of knowledge and understanding. Why? Because it may be able to ask questions to help either party understand where they may have made a mistake, or be able to pull it to a resolution even without a judgment being able to be forced upon them, so to speak. So you can kind of see activities here, and in the center of it, maybe proposals or resolutions or dialogues as they go back. They would call it in the normal world a docket. So instead of being a docket around a legal case, this is a timeline that goes through compromises. It doesn't necessarily use colonial law structures, but it uses the ability to do exactly what the digital world dispute resolution system was built for, which is to solve disputes, right? Well, party A has an issue with party B. It also has the ability to potentially tie into dynamic reputation building. So you can see reputation ties into multiple different virtues and metrics, maybe around good faith or transparency or fairness. So you can see the individual. And again, this is not driven based upon some centralized policy, if you will. It's actually driven based upon a council. And these are the actual different councils here. So the councils can get involved. There should be a legal, let's see. Yeah, this council is actually what would help to create a lot of the frameworks and guidance for things. But ultimately, it's done with all of transparency in the middle of it. So imagine the ability for people to say, I actually want to be a part of a digital world where, for instance, on this call, we have folks from all around the world, right? So we've got different countries, different languages, different currencies, different laws, but we can all choose to be a part of a system that can actually bring transparency, honesty, and if people want privacy, they can also stay private. If you've got different governing or observing or council members, it can literally be very, very transparent or not, but ultimately it can be effective. The reason that this is important is the systems that are centralized are going to go here one way or another, and the decentralized environment must have it, especially as it ties to the different layers. When we're talking about these layers, this is a good example of a service that can actually be layered on it, but it has to come with identity being private and independent first. As complicated as that may sound, identity starts everything, then transactions or finance, then storage, then communications, assets, endorsements, governance, which, by the way, there's multiple different jurisdictions in the world that countries are saying, you know what, you can govern yourself, and we as a state or a country or a kingdom or a province will actually endorse you as the individual to be able to govern yourself, hold your own assets, etc. So you're seeing a parallel system in almost all the centralized systems standing up using intelligence that is not centralized, but it uses councils to be able to come together. There's no king, there's no president, there's no ruler, there's no prime minister, there's not even a puppet master or Wizard of Oz individual behind the scenes. It's literally very complicated to build, but it's very important to be able to get out there to the world to be able to realize and recognize. So any feedback?
Hey, Michael, I'm going to cut you off, but I like that term you use, puppet master.
Yeah, that's what these.
Yeah,
that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, all right, I want to hold you up.
No, that's what it is. Thank you. So that's basically it. So we've gone through Aotearoa. We've gone through the digital world dispute resolution system using artificial intelligence, and I've kind of shown a little bit about how it could work, how it could function. These systems are still being stood up. So involvement, questions, answers, how do you want it to roll out? What do you want to ensure that it doesn't have or it does have? or what are we doing in a responsible way to make sure that we're not just another centralized, decentralized system? Thoughts, comments, feedback?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So I'm just wondering, for the dispute resolution, I'm just wondering.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, so you're using, so this system will use AI to resolve conflict?
It could initially, or people can select individuals that actually they say, you know what, I trust a human over AI. It's kind of like if you go to mediation or arbitration, one party can select maybe 5 arbitrators. So, and then one party can, out of those 5 arbitrators, they can pick the one that they want. That's usually how they do that type of thing. So you could say, I want AI or I don't want AI. And then they can say, maybe I want AI first, and then I want to go to arbitration or mediation. And, you know, one person can say, well, I'll pick this guy, and you pick between those. So it's trying to create that dispute neutral ground where people feel comfy and like it's fair and balanced. Does that make sense?
How do we know that it's fair? Because I mean, look at the. I mean, I'm in Canada, but you know, we're the U.S. is my big sister, and there's just seems to be very little justice anywhere. So how do we know that this system could provide fairness and justice?
You know what's funny? I think if you just look at this right here, just look at the people. These are male. These are in a certain jurisdiction. You can tell there's archetypes. You can also, you know, in one case you could discriminate, and the other case you could say, well, what's the color? That's not what AI brings. I think that AI brings a neutral environment where I believe that in the next 3 years, you will see systems like this standing up, and they will literally be how a lot of these things actually get resolved. The problem is the data that they're fed, whether it's how they learn or the laws that are behind them, kind of like what we talked about within these environments. You know, how do they learn? What is their guidance? What is the adaptability, so to speak? And that's really, we hope to bring a transparent ecosystem to this. This is not completed by any means. And that's exactly why this kind of a forum to say, you know what, that doesn't feel right. Or maybe if we took it with this approach, it would work. Or, you know, so the goal is to be neutral by a jurisdiction. For instance, you know, you talked about you're in a different country. You know, what governs the laws of how we communicate? For instance, can I record this conversation without you knowing it and put it in admissible in a court of law? In the state of Utah, that's actually legal. In the state of Florida, that's legal. In the state of California, that's not legal. In the state, I don't know what it is up in Canada. But my point is imagine if all of us can actually just say, there's something new that's happened in our lifetime, and it's how we communicate, it's how we collaborate, and it's in this digital realm. And this digital realm could have new rules and that we can all choose to live by. And this is the difference between the centralized systems and the decentralized systems, is we can actually choose through a private membership association. We can choose to be a part of something that actually follows a framework that is transparent. It uses open source. It uses open standards, and it can be passed from generation to generation, even after our generation takes its last breath. Does that make sense, Danielle, or do you have any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, you know, if we need a system that is just, and if this can bring true justice, then my gosh, I'm all in, whether it's AI or not. But who's training the AI? That would be
this particular system has only been trained on this legislation and the details that are in here. So there's an element to it that's like, well, what if it doesn't do this? Or what if it doesn't know this? And to be honest with you, I personally don't know if it's even going to work. I think, you know, a lot of us earlier, we said, hey, we need to do this. We should shoot at it. And this was even before AI became a thing. And now that we've been able to test the system, and this is just test. I mean, I don't know if it's going to be effective. I personally believe that this is one of the use cases that humanity could use that would actually better society and better the individuals and better accountability and transparency and responsibility. Even if they do it privately, you know, if two people can come together with a neutral ground and truly be able to communicate as long as they're honest. Now, that's where a lot of this stuff gets really crazy. Honesty and transparency and responsibility, I think, are three different things. So
Yeah.
people can
Now, do you know of anything in the centralized world using AI for conflict resolution?
Not at scale yet, but I do know that there are systems that are standing up. I've never used any of them, but I did some research about 9 months ago, and I want to say there was one over in Europe that did arbitration that was moving from a human-based that had AI augmentation to it. But I don't know. There's nothing in the world that uses decentralized identity and payments that links into it. And I think that's where this is really going to be very valuable. Does this make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, it makes total sense, and I can see the possibility. I mean, I can definitely see it. If this can work, it's yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, and you know, it may, you can see kind of where it's at in the progress side of things. You know, if there's witnesses or third parties that come in and they've been verified, you know, it really can work, and it's as simple as pulling people in through scans. I believe this has the potential to be one of the most important use cases for artificial intelligence. And as humans, I'm not talking about this crazy life where there's 5 times more robots than there are humans, or 3 times or 1 times, or at least half the population, or we're living on a different planet. And I'm not saying that these types of goals are inappropriate. As a matter of fact, I think they're beautiful. And I commend anybody that wants to build rockets and robots and cars and go other places. I really do. But I believe that we have an amazing Earth that we get to live on. It's already built, not built necessarily for us, but we've adapted to it. Our bodies work, we breathe it. You know, the things that are actually growing on trees pop off oxygen for us, and we pop off carbon dioxide for them. The ecosystem is really, really good. You know, that's something that you don't have on these other planets that you just can't take for granted. And I believe that AI has a place, and I believe that AI actually has a really beautiful place before dispute resolution. I believe it actually has an amazing place within genealogy and who we are and how we're connected. Specifically, what Ray was about with Whakapapa and family and oneness. You know, the first will be the last will be the first. And when you understand who the Maori are and what they stand for and where they come from, and also I believe how governments, namely the government of New Zealand and Aotearoa and the Crown, will be able to potentially come together in a framework that can actually benefit humanity. So, yeah, I hope that makes some sense. So.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Any thoughts or comments around these topics we've gone through so far?
All right. I'm new here. Hello, I'm Sean.
Hello, Sean.
I don't claim to be a world expert on this, but have you heard anything about homomorphic encryption?
No, go ahead and spell it out for us.
There's some recent work this year out of MIT I heard about, where they use also bounded polynomial functions, another buzzword, but the gist is you can take full advantage of the China box function of an AI, where you can hypothetically feed it a couple of different kinds so far. They're still developing the functions, but you can prove it doesn't know what you're asking it, but it can still answers the questions correctly. there's only a couple of limited math functions they can do with this right now, but they're developing them on a paper I could send over to you guys. But if that's the case, you could take your decentralized physical infrastructure and your AI could have at least a limited set of things where they can use the horsepower of a giant data center to solve it. But it doesn't even know, you can prove it does not know what you just asked it, but it gets you a correct answer, is what I'm trying to say is the gist of it. I think this is relevant to what you're trying to do here, but that would be something, if you haven't heard about it, you might find interesting.
Yeah, I haven't heard about it directly, but please drop the white paper and we'll do some research and come back every week and we'll see how it progresses. And please be a part of this. Help the world to roll these types of things out. I'm sure some of these concepts may be morbid to you or foreign, but as you give it a chance to understand it, it may be able to come up with something that is meaningful and we can all become a part of, so to speak. Yeah, this looks really good. We'll go ahead and read through this. This also ties to some of the thing. Let's see. Yeah. Yeah, I personally haven't seen this, so interesting.
Okay. I was just saying with this, with sufficient development, you might be able to get it so the AI can answer questions about the cases without being able to spill anything on you. You don't have to even trust it. It's a provably unknowable question
so
that it gets correct.
So it's
sort of the crazy idea.
You could kind of reset it before every case. Yeah. So you get it has no, let's say that one case has a finding to it and preconceived notions. You can actually start over a new case with no preconceived notions. Is that what you're saying? Potentially. You
can do that, but what I'm saying is you can ask it is this a crime? And it will not know you asked it that question, but it can tell you a correct answer. You might say, if you can develop the system to do that.
Oh, I got it. So you're talking about anonymous. So you can actually communicate anonymously. That's a very different use case. Okay.
Yeah. It can communicate anonymously, and it doesn't even know someone asked it a question. It can't fib or spill the beans, even if someone tried to.
Very interesting. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. That's awesome.
If I could help.
Other thoughts or comments, feedback, observations? Okay. For those of you, by the way, before I forget, this last week we did an announcement and it did hit the public wire, so we can talk a little bit more about this. I know that we needed to get some approval from, we were going to do a digital world announcement, which we have not done yet since we didn't get that all approved and pushed through. But this last week, December 18th, there's an announcement from Clear United and Sundance Strategies to basically issue, there's 4 tranches. The first tranche is a $250 million life bond, which for those of you that are not familiar with life bonds, they're life settlements, which are, let's say that Sean, he's brilliant. Let's say, I don't know if you've got family or kids, but let's say you've got a $4 million life insurance policy on you and you get to a point in life, let's say you've had it for a couple of years, maybe 2 years, 5 years, 12 years. And you say, I'm tired of paying into this system and I'm willing to sell half of that policy for $2 million up front. And I basically, they guarantee the rest of the payments and it goes away. Imagine this as a type of system layered with blockchain technologies and payments and AI elements to be able to create a future type, I won't call it social security system, but it has the potential to provide some of those same types of features or functions where people can basically be able to receive value, pay value while they're alive, and using technology, it can basically transfer it from that life cycle. For those that are not aware, I'll go ahead and log into an environment here and show you exactly what I'm talking about. So I'm just grabbing my phone. I'm going to click on Clear Life. I'm going to click on scan. I'm going to go ahead and scan. It's going to log me in, 5-factor authentication. And now once I'm in, I'll select a wallet. It'll show assets. I'm going to look at these assets from what we call the life cycle. So from an account to an asset, which can be dynamically created by anyone. Current, maybe it's a home, maybe it's a car, maybe it's land, whatever. Currencies, equities, commodities, cryptos, rewards, bonds, and then insurance. And so a lot of this actually fits inside of these categories. But what if we could use the ability to actually pay and automate the life cycle that someone would have around their assets and combine these types of elements within it? That's basically what this system does. For those that are not aware, this is a system that is dynamic. It's drag and drop. Let's say I want to take DUSD and buy DBTC. I want to buy, let's just say one. I want to go ahead and actually transfer it. It's just as simple. This is going to do 5-factor authentication again. And it basically will go through the process of transferring from one asset to another in real time with no fees. So you can kind of see how that works. And where you're operating within an environment that you own your own assets and you can trade your own assets at will, it provides a level of transparency and systems that humanity has never seen, especially because not only is it real time, but there's no fees associated to it and no centralized systems. It's the individual that actually owns those environments. So with that being said, one of the things that we're actually announcing is that this is coming from Clear United. And some of you understand what Clear United is, some of you don't. Clear United is an infrastructure where we can all basically come together and provide adoption and awareness of these types of systems in a way that humanity has not seen before. This is actually an updated, and many have asked for this. This is an updated Clear United system that does a lot more than just talk about life and bonds and insurance and others, but it talks about how you can actually use tools that are decentralized to come up with your own digital identity and systems. Imagine being able to take from the centralized systems your own identity and data. So let's say, I'll scroll down here. Let's see if I can find a slide real fast. Let's say that your data is in lots of different systems. The ability for you to take that data back and then manage that data on your own with your own systems and AI is really the fork in the road that we're talking about. And then what happens when states, I'll go ahead and pop this up a little bit more. What happens when states actually endorse that? So they verify and validate who you are, and they basically bless it. And the jurisdictions say, these different organizations, when you request your data, they need to send it back, or there could be a lawsuit. And that's one of the reasons why this dispute resolution system's up. Imagine if people say, I want my identity back from social media. Facebook, give me my photos, my albums, my files, my contacts, etc. Banks do the same. Healthcare do the same. Search engines do the same. Medical records, pharmaceutical records, ISPs, social platforms, or maybe even communication platforms, maybe the vendors that you work with, not just in banking, but communications. What if you request your data and they don't send it back? That creates a dispute that could be mediated in a process that could then also tie to other jurisdictions. So if you're seeing this all come together and you're linking it in your mind, that is a service that could be launched in addition to the services that you see within the current Clear United environment. Those involved as members of Clear United already understand the benefit of the ClearPhone. I'll pull up the existing site at clearunited.com. So the products here, you basically have all of these different 16 apps, and they look like this, that are built into the ClearPhone today. But what about the data restoration? What about things in the centralized world? Maybe it's your email address. Maybe it's your phone number. Maybe it's a username. Maybe they've been compromised. Imagine if you put in an email address and it says, this many accounts have been compromised, and here's 2 of your last passwords. Imagine that type of a system also linking to your identity that can actually free you because it can reset those passwords in a way that you actually own it. Just like how I logged in and made that transfer within that system. I wasn't using a username and password. But what happens if a privacy environment based upon your life and your identity, whether we're talking about emails or wallets? Wallets is a whole other thing that humanity is not even thinking about right now today. Is, well, they just think about, what if I lose my keys? No, what if your keys are taken? What if you can actually have the ability to rotate your keys and everything else that you've done that's also separated you from AI, to be able to then roll out an identity that is still tied to everything else that you've built your world on, but it's not compromised anymore? What's an example of that? A credit card. A credit card basically has a user, well, it's got a name on it, right? It's got an expiration date on it, but it also has a public key and a private key. The public key is the 16 digits. The private key is the 3 digits, or unless it's American Express, it's 4. So when you give that out to actually use it in the credit card world, you're giving it out and you're exposing it every time you swipe or put it in online or give it to someone to make a purchase. Well, in this world, you literally can create an environment where those keys are yours. Not only the private keys, but also elements of the public keys are masked with derived keys. And then you have the ability to actually rotate those in the future. Imagine if Clear United offered not only the life platform, which tied to insurance or bonds or reserves. Remember, the reserve is a key, very, very key part of this. So imagine a reserve where you can get involved in it and you can convert your centralized fiat funds. Maybe they're in Fidelity Investments or Charles Schwab or Bank of America or Chase or whatever other banks are in your part of the world. And you can go from USD or Canadian dollars or Australian or renminbi or pounds or marks or you name it. You can convert those into digital assets that you own and control, that can then be converted into an environment that does not only dispute resolution, like things that happen real time, but what about estate planning? And how do you layer estate planning and dispute resolution on top of one another so that as things go from generation to generation, remember Ray, remember what he was all about. When we talk about generations to generations, it's like we don't want to have concerns or issues, even as us as individuals or within our own families. So how does that go from a father to a son or a son to a father? We've all seen, it's even in my mother's world, her family had a lot of assets. They worked hard, they moved across plains, they left Europe, they came over with nothing, they came and worked a couple centuries and ended up with a good part of a town, downtown part of a town. And what you end up seeing is maybe siblings fighting amongst one another when their parents are gone to see how assets are pushed around or separated. This system can not only manage a life of assets when you actually are alive, but can also do it when you're not alive. And so this system, imagine telling people about a system that is the future of Bitcoin. Think about it. Bitcoin is a litmus test. It proved that the cryptography worked. It proved that the adoption could work and the centralized fiat systems would go into it. There's been over $3 trillion worth now. But what it didn't prove is you can run an economy on it. You can't do it real time, and it truly isn't private. A good example of how it's not private is look at what's happening within different countries that use the Lightning Network to deploy it within their countries. That Lightning Network centralizes decentralization. Bitcoin was originally intended to be decentralized. They didn't plan, and I can't say it that way. There wasn't artificial intelligence out in 2008 when the white paper came out, in 2009 when the actual first transaction hit in January. There was an AI, but I'm telling you that AI will literally link identities and payments together with an individual. And once that's done, there's no other path, in my opinion, other than a decentralized approach similar to what we're talking about here. So imagine if life in multiple different realms, assets, currencies, equities, commodities, cryptos, rewards, insurance, and bonds, all will be able to be released, but by people telling people through the Clear United type model. So for those of you that are familiar with it, think about what this really means. You can tell someone about a Life app and receive a reward, just like what we've seen when you tell people about a phone. Remember, in the first product that Clear United launched was actually a phone, a decentralized phone. So with that being said, there's a lot of details. There's a lot of context for those of you that have been around for a while. This may answer a lot of questions that you've had throughout this year, but this Clear United infrastructure is set to be rolled out in January. And we're grateful for those that continue to just have faith and join this, whether it's short term, whether it's long term, whether it's for a millennium. So with that being said, this is the third thing we've gone through. The first thing was Aotearoa. The second thing was a digital world dispute resolution system. And the fourth thing was Clear United, and a lot of questions that folks have had. This is going to have a whole new back-end system. You'll be able to have your assets transfer real time. The prior system did elements of it, but it had some centralized components that we're ripping out of it. So expect the same types of features and functions from version 1, which was behind a username and password, to version 2, which will actually be running a system that you're already familiar with the decentralized backend. Any thoughts or comments, questions, concerns?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, Michael, any monies that we earn, we have to first send to our bank and then send it into the digital world. Right now there's no rails that we can go, like I couldn't have my pension deposited right in the digital world.
You can, if we do it based upon third-party systems that tie to gold and silver. So if you were to say, I want my pension to go into an account that purchases gold and silver and then has a digital receipt, which could be in this system, that will work. Did a light just go on for you?
Oh my goodness. Thank you. Oh, wow. Okay.
That follows all laws. It follows all money transmitter laws. It follows, as a matter of fact, you can select to buy gold eagles with it. And if you do that, you actually can negate some of the tariff topics that is also out there. So that's a different conversation as well. But
so will that work in Canada? Like, because I'm in Canada, right? So could I have my company send it to, I know where? Yeah.
Yes, you can. Yes.
Okay. Thank you very, very much.
And you're actually going to see here in a short period of time that one of the companies that you can link an account to will actually be the different types of gold and silver type companies that are out there. So for those of you that have been paying attention, if you just look like over the last month, this is silver. These flat things are where the market shuts down over the weekend. And then this is actually going to be gold. So you can see silver, you can see gold, you can see how they're increasing. These are the digital versions of them that are with particular companies. So you can see that, Alpine Gold Exchange, you can see just different environments, even gold backs. So you'll be able to see those types of things as well. So hopefully if this is making a lot of sense. As a matter of fact, that's the first time I've ever seen the gold backs break $9. I mean, when we started, what was it? $2, the digital version of them. So for those that are paying attention, you will have already received massive gains. And when we look at some of the things, whether it's digital or even native, we look at this last year. I mean, we're talking about, 27 cents to $2.24. And now that is basically a market cap of $223 million total market cap. And that's what runs the digital world. So there's only going to be 100 million of them. I mean, we're talking about real value exchange. For those that are not aware, I'm going to look up Ripple, because Ripple is really probably the closest environment that's out today. And they probably have about 20% of the technology that I just showed you. And they're at $186 billion in fully diluted value. So let me compare that again. When we looked at this, this is at 223 million fully diluted value for the digital world. When you look at the direct competitors, and I'll walk through that with you real fast. So I'm going to digitalworld.earth. I'm scrolling down to the comparison chart. I'm expanding it, and you can see where, and actually take a screenshot so I can point it out so you can really see it well. So you can see the digital world here. This was done by a third-party independent university out of Australia, and you can see how that actually compares with the Ripple environment. So Ripple literally, from a technology stack, I believe has about 20% of the feature function capabilities that the digital world has, but it's literally, what is that, 1 million times the value? 186 billion compared to 223 million. So I'm not going to make any statements. You can use your own knowledge. This is a decentralized exchange. And the simple reality is you can go from USD into different assets. In this particular case, you could select native, and you can come in easily here. $10 would basically purchase. You pop a credit card in. That's the on-ramp. So, you would basically be doing something similar to that. As a matter of fact, Wally, if you could give me a task to follow up with the team tonight around not just paying with credit card, but to Danielle's question, to paying with direct deposit. We need to follow up on that. I know that was a part of it, but does that make sense? And then that would have a unique identifier that drops in. So, other thoughts or comments or feedback or observations? Well, I appreciate you taking the time. I appreciate the opportunity to build with you throughout this year and this decade. We'll go ahead and wrap up with a comment from Phil Lane Jr., who is he's right next to Ray. So you've got Ray here and then Phil Lane Jr. here. And this was taken with one shot with Phil Lane. And there'll be a day where Phil will also not be with us. And I just want to express my gratitude to him and the work that's gone on here, because he's been a big part of this, not just in Aotearoa, but what he calls a reunion of the eagle and the condor. He is a hereditary chief, selected by many, and from a birthright of who his mother and his father was, and just an amazing environment. So we'll go ahead and wrap up on this. Hopefully you can hear it. If not, let me know.
Mitakepi, my very, very beloved relatives of our human family. We live in a corrupt global system.
But are we a part of it?
Are we part of it? Are we part of it?
No.
No.
No. No. We've been very patient as the few control resources we all need. The question is, can we change it?
We've all heard the voices shouting, "It's not your turn."
Our heart aches to do more, to be more. But time is running out.
Time is running out.
Time is running out.
We start by completely trusting we can make a difference. Because with one heart and one mind and many bodies, in unity, we can do anything.
Together we must take unprecedented, unified action.
And transform the world around us.
No matter how challenging that may be.
Individual sovereignty, freedom, love, and justice.
Unite us all.
Because there are Indigenous-led technologies coming.
That gives us all the opportunity to stand,
To give, to love.
That's what responsible technology should do.
If you are one of those who believe it's your turn,
stand together.
Rise up.
everyone.
Everywhere.
You, as a rising generation.
We'll see you next week. Have a wonderful Christmas. Like I said, Christmas Eve is
Happy holidays to everybody.
Thanks, George.
Merry Christmas, everyone. Happy holidays.
Thank you. Okay.
Bye. Bye, everybody. Much love.